Tonight, from Southern California, the flames of October.
There's a mandatory evacuation for this neighborhood.
Tens of thousands of homes threatened by wind-driven blazes. Walls of fire, towers of smoke force almost 100,000 people to flee. Will they have anything to return to? Can anything stop this destructive march? Complete coverage from the fire's front lines tonight.
Also tonight, in Baghdad, the guerrilla war explodes. Dozens die in suicide car bombings, one aimed at the International Red Cross.
This is the CBS Evening News. With Dan Rather reporting tonight from San Diego and John Roberts in New York.
Good evening from San Diego, where the skyline is cloaked in smoke. There was darkness at noon today. Much of Southern California is besieged by fire this evening. President Bush has declared 4 counties, including Los Angeles and San Diego, a major federal disaster area. Governor Gray Davis has called out the National Guard and asked neighboring states for more help, battling flames raging out of control. Wildfire conditions in California could hardly be worse or more dangerous. Plenty of dry brush and timber, hot, dry weather, fierce Santa Ana winds kicking up at any time. The fires, at least 11 major ones, are burning from the Mexico border to the Simi Valley, north of Los Angeles. More than a dozen people are confirmed dead in the fires so far. Hundreds of homes have burned to the ground, and tens of thousands more are in the danger zone. Flames have raced through hundreds of thousands of acres, including whole neighborhoods, and making freeways potential fire traps. Smoke and air traffic control problems have disrupted air travel to and from the west. Thousands of residents have lost power and may not get it back for days. Air quality is now a widespread health hazard. Californians are under orders to conserve water needed to fight the flames. CBS News correspondents are deployed tonight throughout the Southern California wildfire zone. We start first where the fires now appear to be worst. Bill Whitaker is covering the, I use the word measuredly, hellish situation here in San Diego County.
It was like staring into hell, said one woman. Feeding on drought-dry brush and fanned by hot Santa Ana winds, the San Diego fires are racing from ridgetop to treetop, devilishly destroying one house, missing the next, shrouding the region in ash and fear and loss. This man's children were trapped and burned in their car.
You'd walk up to the front door this way.
Kathy and Don Fay got out minutes before the blaze consumed their house last night. They returned today to this.
It's a little bit like a pit in your stomach. It's an emptiness. And I start thinking about, okay, what are we going to do? And, you know, where do you live?
These voracious flames are devouring hillsides and homes. This cedar fire has forced one of the main east-west arteries to close down and thousands of people to evacuate. The fear is that this fire will link up with another to the south and form a massive firewall across San Diego County. A hunter was taken into custody for lighting a signal fire, which started this largest blaze, forcing residents to flee.
Run into your friends. Oh, they lost their home. They've lost their home. I mean, our friends' homes are just gone.
I've never seen anything like this, and I assume this is what bombs going off over in Iraq and the gutting of buildings looks like.
Seasoned firefighters are overwhelmed. Are you close to having a handle on this?
We don't have any control line around it because it's so big, the wind conditions. Our priority right now is life and property.
With Santa Ana winds expected to intensify again, everyone is bracing for another hot night. Bill Whitaker, CBS News, San Diego.
We take you now about 100 miles north of San Diego, where major fires are raging in San Bernardino County. CBS's Vince Gonzalez spent much of this day in the thick of it.
The monster fire officials believe was started by an arsonist last Tuesday is still raging in the San Bernardino National Forest. Today, it moved on dozens of homes in the resort town of Crestline. Anxious evacuees waited at the bottom of the mountain.
But our number one priority is to put the fire out.
I'm living in my car for 3 days now with 2 cats. I don't dare to leave because there's, all these nasty rumors about looters coming in.
This is the leading edge of the fire that destroyed homes in Devore last night. The problem all day has been the shifting winds, which push the fire one direction and then another, sometimes right into firefighters, or like now, right into an area full of homes.
Hello, Sheriff's Department!
And Devore residents who refused to evacuate yesterday were told in no uncertain terms to get out today.
The fire department's telling you to leave. Okay, you need to take off. It's not worth your life, okay?
But residents are worried that firefighters stretched too thin won't be able to protect their homes.
The media can be here. They have no reason here. They have no liabilities here. Oh, but they can go.
A shorthanded fire crew actually gave one of their hoses to this man to protect his property. They weren't able to save his guest house.
We have not, the last 3 days, actually been able to make any control attempt. It's mainly been out in front of the fire, trying to protect structures, trying to save the homes.
In fact, officials say they can't even imagine containment until much later this week. This fire's pushing on 100,000 acres and growing. Also growing, the number of homes destroyed, now in the hundreds. 2 people lost their lives here, and the erratic winds continue to push this fire into more Southern California communities. Dan?
Vince Gonzalez, near the fire lines in San Bernardino County. West of San Bernardino, serious fires also broke out in California's Simi Valley. CBS's John Blackstone is there.
The wildfire that closed in on homes in Simi Valley created its own wind and its own terror. For 2 days, residents of Simi Valley, northwest of Los Angeles, had watched the fire move toward them across the rocky hills above. But a major freeway seemed to create a fire break that could save the city from the worst. When winds picked up early this morning, though, the freeway was no barrier at all. With flames nearing his house, Terry Cernick took out his video camera.
It was a big whirlpool. The flames were seriously 80 to 100 feet tall right through here.
From the ground, fighting back seemed hopeless. From above, the houses on Sandalwood Drive and Cowboy Street seemed certain to be the next to go. Sean and Karen Nordblom accepted the inevitable. The fire would win.
Once it jumped the freeway, it just rushed through here very, very fast.
It was a wall of flame coming over this hill.
It's unbelievable. You'd have to see it to believe it. It was like someone dropped a bomb.
The wind-driven flames burned with such speed, heat, and intensity through these dry hills above Simi Valley that within little more than 15 minutes, everything here turned to ash, except the community itself. The fire burned right to the backyards and then stopped. The houses were spared.
So thankful to be alive, I can't describe it.
Neighbors pulled on fire gear and patrolled for hot spots. Among so many losses, firefighters were able to claim one victory.
Never know. See what Mother Nature throws in the next curve.
But it's not just nature that's responsible for all this. It's now believed the cause of the fire here in Simi Valley was arson. Dan?
John Blackstone reporting live from the Simi Valley. I'll be back soon from here in the California fire zone. First, let's go to John Robertson, New York, with news of some serious developments in Iraq. John?
Thanks, Dan, and good evening from New York. There has been a major surge in violence in Iraq. In Baghdad today, dozens of people were killed and hundreds wounded by terrorist suicide bombings, including one that targeted the International Red Cross. And correspondent Kimberly Dozier reports tonight, more than ever before, these attacks appear to be well-planned and coordinated.
A series of suicide car bombings and rocket attacks ripped through Baghdad in just 24 hours, hitting harder and taking more lives than any guerrilla actions before. The targets were symbolic: aid workers, Iraqi policemen, and U.S. soldiers, anyone related to the coalition. One of the bombers tried to drive a van disguised as an ambulance into the International Red Cross office. Guards stopped him, but not before he detonated the bomb just outside, killing at least a dozen people.
The smoke was so dense and the heat was so strong that you couldn't get close enough to actually see how damaged the building was.
Other suicide bombers hit 3 police stations in synchronized attacks, coming minutes apart. But one would-be suicide bomber, a Syrian man, was captured before he could strike, possibly proving American suspicions that foreign terrorists are working with Iraqis. At least 1 American soldier was killed in today's bombings, and 4 others died in guerrilla action Sunday, including a colonel killed in a rocket attack on the main coalition hotel, with the visiting Deputy Defense Secretary inside. Another rocket was fired at the building last night.
First, the terrorists proved they could strike at the heart of the coalition, not once, but twice. Then they showed they'll punish anyone who works with Americans, no matter how many Iraqis get hurt in the process.
American officials say it's actually a sign the militants are getting desperate. But many Iraqis believe they are paying a higher price than the Americans. U.S. officials say to guard every possible target here would mean putting American soldiers on every block, which might antagonize Iraqis even more. The guerrillas are proving it takes less force to create chaos than to keep the peace. Kimberly Dozier, CBS News, Baghdad.
Asked today about the violence and terrorism in Iraq, President Bush characterized it as a sign of U.S. success. As he put it, quote, "The more progress we make, the more desperate these killers become." Coming up next on tonight's CBS Evening News, California's wildfires. Why are they so bad this year? The volatile mix that created the chaos. Tonight's Inside Story. Later, what went wrong with a popular SUV? Hundreds of Dodge Durango owners have complained about a dangerous problem. Eye on America investigates.
Morning, Joe. New haircut? No. New shoes? No.
Hey, Joe. You been working out?
No.
Hey, Joe. Shave your mustache.
Here in Southern California, seasonal wildfires are part of the trade-off for nearly year-round clear skies and moderate temperatures. But what accounts for the especially devastating fires now raging from the Los Angeles suburbs to the Mexican border? CBS's Sandra Hughes looked into this and has the inside story.
The ferocious Santa Ana winds terrorizing Southern California are living up to their namesake, the Mexican general who ravaged the Alamo.
I think it's time to leave. What do you think? I don't know. No, let's hang in just a little bit longer.
Every October, firefighters brace themselves for these scorching winds. This year, they expected the worst, and they got it.
Water!
Here's why. California is deep into the 4th year of a major drought. More and more homes are pushing up against rugged forest terrain. And then there's the dreaded bark beetle, which has killed more than 1 million trees, turning hundreds of thousands of acres into kindling.
All those conditions have definitely contributed to probably the biggest or the most catastrophic fire season that I've seen. And most firefighters in this camp would agree with that.
Second floor, that side, pull the ceilings and see if you got anything up in the attic space.
With crews fighting so many fires, hundreds of calls for reinforcements have gone unanswered.
I feel sick. Wish there's more we could do. We're out of resources.
So for the first time in a decade since the disastrous Malibu Laguna Hills fires, California has turned to other states for help. The scope of the blazes is a logistical nightmare.
What's that? I want channel B. We're not on this page. Yeah.
At times, areas desperate for help can't get it.
If we protect this, it'll save, I think, all those homes right there, you know?
While in other areas, fire crews wait for marching orders. With resources this thin, the best firefighters can do is what they call bump and run, making the tough choice between what they can't save and where to make a stand. Sandra Hughes, CBS News, Devore.
Coming up on CBS Eye on America, is there or is there not something wrong with a popular American SUV? He says the steering on his Dodge Durango went bad, her tire fell off. And they're not alone. CBS News investigates next.
A study out tonight indicates that women who take aspirin every day to help prevent heart attacks and strokes may face an increased risk for cancer of the pancreas. Researchers say the surprising and worrisome findings turned up in a long-term study of thousands of women. Pancreatic cancer is still very rare, but it is one of the hardest to treat. Serious safety questions are being raised about a leading sports utility vehicle tonight, the Dodge Durango, following an unusually large number of complaints about the failure of a key suspension part. Mika Brzezinski has tonight's Eye on America investigation.
The Dodge Durango is one of the most popular SUVs on the road. John Peelers seemed to drive just fine until the noise started.
It just was a squeak like that. Just you'd hit a little bump, it weep, weep.
Not one to take chances,
Okay, yeah, we got something there.
Peeler had his mechanic check it out. It turns out the year-old car had a worn-out upper ball joint, a critical component of the wheel structure. Mechanic Mike Hudgens says with only 31,000 miles on the vehicle, that's simply too soon.
We very seldom see problems in a ball joint before 100,000 miles. If that movement got more excessive, and you would lose control of your car.
And that's exactly what happened to Monique Conrad.
It really turned out to be a nightmare.
A news reporter who came to us because she works for CBS sister company BET. Her 2000 Durango had 31,000 miles on it when she bought it. A few months later, the upper ball joints failed. She says she's lucky to be alive.
The tire, and this big piece of metal that's probably a foot past the tire, was bouncing across 4 lanes of the road.
Since they were still under warranty, Daimler Chrysler fixed the problem for both John and Monique. But the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration, or NHTSA, has launched an aggressive investigation into the Durango upper ball joints. Though there have been no reported injuries or deaths, with 900,000 Durangos on the road, Joan Claybrook, a former NHTSA administrator, says Daimler Chrysler should issue a recall immediately.
The question is, did the company know about this? What did they know? What have they done? And why they haven't fixed it if they had knowledge, because it's such a serious defect.
NHTSA investigators say upper ball joint complaints on the Durango far outnumber any other SUV on the road.
Durangos and Dakotas seem like they're tougher on them than other vehicles.
CBS News went undercover into a Dodge dealership where service managers say they've actually seen more problems with the Dodge Dakota, which uses the same ball joints.
I see more in the Dakotas, believe it or not. I see a lot of Dakotas with upper ball joints that are wore out.
In response to the NHTSA investigation, Daimler Chrysler states that the overwhelming majority of customer complaints received regarding these ball joints do not communicate any safety concerns whatsoever. The company declined our repeated requests for an interview.
I'm just looking for some satisfaction that they're going to own up to it and fix the problem.
But John Peeler isn't waiting on the company. He's joined a nationwide class action lawsuit against Chrysler. In Kennesaw, Georgia, I'm Mika Brzezinski for Eye on America.
On the CBS Market Watch tonight, Bank of America announced it is buying Fleet Boston, New England's largest bank. The deal, creating the second biggest U.S. bank, must be approved by government regulators. But on Wall Street, investors responded by pushing Fleet shares sharply higher. The deal also boosted the broader markets. The Dow gained 25 points today. The NASDAQ just a little more than 17. Next up on tonight's CBS Evening News, Dan Rather in Southern California has more on the region's devastating wildfires.
This will be a long, tense night for countless Southern Californians, for firefighters on the lines, for those in shelters, for those whose homes are threatened, because the fires do not sleep, and where they pass, little remains and everything changes. From one scorched street to another, the loss from the worst brush fire in a decade is only beginning to sink in.
All my clothes, everything I have.
A blaze so fast-moving, getting out of the way was a luxury few had.
How you doing? Good. How are you?
But in the midst of it all, comfort was as close as the nearest neighbor or the nearest stranger. People like Doug Smith, carrying nothing more than hope and a hose onto a street he hardly knew.
It's dry, it's hot, and there's not enough firemen to help these guys out right now.
There are those who remained not only to save their own home.
It's a nightmare, it really is. Absolute nightmare.
But to try to save others. And although Andrew Maines couldn't save a single house, having tried, he says hurts less than not having tried at all. The Yates family returned to their home greeted by out-of-breath friends holding buckets, offering hugs in the face of horror. The home was gone, but not their spirit to stay.
It's the closest place to heaven anyone could ever be.
These days, the helping hands of strangers are trying to make hell seem bearable. Southern California, a very dangerous part of our world tonight. For the CBS Evening News, Dan Rather reporting from San Diego. Good night.
For news 24 hours a day, click on cbsnews.com. Partially sponsored by Walmart, saving you and your family time and money with everyday low prices.